Mm, let's do it. Blah, blah, blah. Brandon, I'm gonna have to take you on tour with me. That's how I want that introduction all the time. But it's crazy that you just learned what a multi hyphenate is because you too are also a multi hyphenate. So I don't understand. So I'm just throwing up a mirror to you today. I'm just showing you who you are. I like it. That's a multi hyphenate. Of course, that's exactly what I would say, but I don't necessarily say that on my LinkedIn profile. But yeah, whenever you see the work, you see the receipts. That's a multi hyphenate. We do a lot of things. Yeah. So in all seriousness, really being a multi hyphenate kind of comes into my 9 to 5 every single day. As a community manager, I am coaching literally thousands of people at scale on everything from video best practices to showing up more authentically on LinkedIn to figuring out how do you tell your story in a way that helps you both build community but also hopefully get on the radar of the people who can put some money on, so right, some money in your pocket. I work with everybody from sales and biz dev professionals to marketing to people in the social media space to my fellow creatives, right? Podcasters. And I really, really just enjoy kind of showing people like who you are is enough and how you show up on social doesn't have to be capped. Like, I know a lot of people see LinkedIn and they think I have to present myself a certain way, but I always challenge, well, what is professionalism to you? And how do we craft that narrative? So that's one part of my job. Then the other part is now being a podcast host. My amazing co-host Gianna and I have a new podcast called Let's Talk Offline, where we're really talking to Gen Z and earlier career professionals and kind of answering those unspoken rules of work, the things that you wish you had known. Now, I'm not Gen Z, okay? For all y'all listening, you're gonna be like, wait, what happened? I'm not Gen Z, I'm a millennial. But I think like what we have learned by building Let's Talk Offline is there's so many more similarities than differences across generations. And if we all just sat down and talked to each other and were honest, we would actually get to learn a lot from each other. And so we come out with like weekly episodes and we really get to talk. And I'm just going to tell y'all, I'm very chaotic on the show. I'm very chaotic on the show. But it's all love. And honestly, I'm just really happy that, you know, it lends myself to opportunities, including to chat with you. Like, Brandon, you be doing some big stuff. I see you, as you should. I mean, Kendrick said it best. Sometimes you really do got to pop out and show people because then they won't play with you. And I'm the first one to say, don't play with it. I love that question. So yeah, I mean, you know, there's definitely moments where I'm like, maybe that could have been saved for the group chat. But I definitely think that what we're learning is that professional conversations can look many different ways. Like, I remember I posted a video on LinkedIn maybe a couple months ago and I talked about professional haters. I was dealing with somebody in my life who was just really hating from inside a club. Like, bro, like you with me. Like, why are you hating? And I did a video on that. And next thing I know, I woke up and we were over 1 million impressions and it kept going and going and going. And so I love to use that example because it just highlights that professional conversations are as unique as the people telling them. And so I always say that if you can approach LinkedIn from the idea of, I have a professional insight that I want to share with the world, And if you figure out a way in which to craft it that the audience can relate to, that's how you build community. With that being said, there's so many different ways that you can tap into your audience at LinkedIn. Now, obviously, if you spent time on LinkedIn, you've seen things like, posts, you've seen probably articles or newsletters, which I always am going to encourage. But a format that we really have been seeing a lot of success in is video, particularly short form video. So for short form video, I'm going to classify that as like a 2 minutes or less. Think quick, actionable, snappy, and things that like have a clear beginning, middle, and end. You got to remember, a lot of people are consuming content, whether it's on LinkedIn or any other platform, on their phones. And so you want to be able to catch people's attention really, really quickly. And you really want to give them something that makes them want to keep coming back. And so with LinkedIn in particular, because we are a professional platform, you have the ability to still be funny and quirky and fly and cultured and anything else, but you can still do it by sharing a professional insight that informs somebody else. And so one of the things, if y'all take nothing else from this interview today, I'm going to tell you, hop on the video wave at LinkedIn. We are seeing uploads up 45% year over year. We're seeing just so many people tap into it from all different industries. And really, it's just as unique as you want it to be. There is no one rhyme or reason or one method of success. You have to just experiment and find what works for you. Mhm. Yeah, I'm very much so the same. And I'm very much so the same in the sense that, like, I've been creating content online for over a decade. And so another video I actually did was about not chasing virality, because I worked at different media publications where virality was the name of the game, and it's not sustainable for any creator, let alone for those of us who don't have teams, who don't have social media managers. We have to do all this on our own. And I think what made that video in particular successful was that I was just real. Like, the video is me sitting on my bathroom floor doing my makeup, talking about these things and telling people, like, you need haters in your life. It's good for character development. Like, you need this because it helps teach you who really shows up for you, and like who is really going to be there for you in your best times and your worst times. And those are things that you need, because as you continue to kind of grow up through the ranks and as you continue to accelerate in your career, you got to be able to vet the people who say they with you and the people who just say they're with you. And I think people really appreciated that vulnerability. They appreciated the realness, which is why I tell people all the time, like, you don't have to be anybody else but yourself. Like, who you are, where you come from, how you talk, how you present yourself, how you interpret the world is more than enough to build community. And this is honestly something that we talk about a lot, even on, like, Let's Talk Offline, for instance, right? Because when the opportunity came for me to be part of this podcast, the first thing I thought I tapped into was my imposter syndrome. I was like, nobody wants to hear this little black girl go off, like, who's had a very untraditional career path, who's worked tons of different jobs. Like, if you look at my resume, it almost never makes sense. And I was like, that's not going to be serviceable. But then what I realized is, when I got in the booth, that's exactly what people needed to hear. People needed to see somebody who looks like them, who is chasing an untraditional career path, speak on her observances of life. And also, particularly for our audiences of color, they needed to see a woman like me in these spaces. And so I say all of that to say that, like you said, you'll never know if something is going to go viral or not. But first of all, that should never be the intention. You should just put the content out there because you want it to affect someone in a positive way, or inform, or whatever, your verb is. But then, by showing up continuously for that audience, you start to satiate the itch that they had, that they didn't even know they had. And soon you become the person that they always want to turn to get that itch. Mm. Yeah. I think I spent so much of my 20s trying to be somebody else. Because, particularly when I first started off in my industry, I was working in like the fashion and beauty space. I had started my business when I was 21. And there was an idea of how black women in the fashion industry showed up, right? And it was very like magazine editor, curated, like everything had to be polished and prim and proper. And I'll never forget, I was at brunch one day because, look, I'm a DC girl, so one thing I'm going to do is find a brunch. Okay, I know y'all be going up in Atlanta too. But so I remember being, this was a couple of years in, and I was out with some friends, and one of my friends was like, who you are online is cool and all, but that's not who you are. And I was like, oh, well, drag me over the mimosa. What are you talking about? And she was like, who you present online to be is cool. And that is a facet of you. Like, that's the fashion and beauty, colorful side of you. But you're not showing people your real person, like your personality, like talking through video or through other formats. And that is your superpower. Like, you make people feel welcome, you make people feel included, you make people know, like, it doesn't matter where you come from, like, you are enough. And I really took that to heart, where I started to ask myself, okay, how can I show up more authentically online, and how can I show up more authentically not just with my immediate peer space, but also to people who ever come across any piece of content. And I kid you not, Brandon, I prayed and I said, Lord, guide me in the way so that I can show up authentically in every space I'm in. Any room you put me in, when I walk out, they're going to know Jamé was there. It's never going to be a question of who was this girl, whatever else. Because if the room is meant for me, I'll succeed in that room. But if the room was not meant for me, either I won't even get in there, or if I get in there by my own default, it won't work out. And that's totally fine. And so as I started to choose different career paths, or as I started, because look, I left journalism because there was no money. I was like, I'm expensive. I am a high cost woman. Okay. I like nice, I love oysters. I'm not going to deprive myself of oysters ever. And I was like, I need money. And so when LinkedIn was building out really our community side, I said, you know what? I like talking to people. At the time, they were looking for someone, particularly in the fashion and beauty space, who could work with creators like the Tory Burches, Rebecca Minkoffs of the world. So I was like, bet, okay, cool, I'll come over. But over time and over these past few years, I realized the more you show up authentically in these rooms, the more other people can start to identify your gifts and talents, and then they can start to build things for you that you don't even see for yourself. I never in a million years would have thought I would have had a podcast with LinkedIn. Never. But who was it? Somebody says, like, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And I was always preparing. One thing about me, I'm always in the wings preparing. I always stay ready so I don't have to get ready. And so then when the opportunity presented itself, it allowed me to then step up to the plate. And I think, like, for me, one thing I always encourage creators of all industries, but particularly our Black creators, stay ready. A lot of people are sitting around twiddling their thumbs looking at what everybody else is doing. You need to be preparing. You need to be scripting. You need to be writing. You need to be testing out video. All right, cool. You just went to, I don't know, you just went to Afrotech, because I just came back from Afrotech. It was lit. You just went to Afrotech and you saw all these panels up there about people talking about AI and innovation. What are you doing now to educate yourself on AI and innovation? What are you doing right now to test out the new formats of video and storytelling? How are you trying to tap into your audience now? It doesn't have to be perfect. In tech, we talk about a minimal viable product. Put out the basic version of it, perfect it later. And so I know that was a super long answer, but I get so passionate about it because so many of the things that I have brought into my life have just been because I've just decided to be me. And particularly for Let's Talk Offline, as Gian and I have crafted out these different episodes, everything from navigating, your first big boy or big girl job, managing a toxic manager, building work friendships. Like, do you even need to make friends at work? Like, these are real conversations. And at no point do we ever shy away from the truth. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what I've learned through experience and what I think you need to hear that you can then take away and apply to your life. And so I just genuinely say, when you walk in your purpose and when you walk in your calling and you walk in the idea that you are dope, everything else falls into place. The opportunities fall because the universe can't do anything but respect the fact that you standing on business. You're standing on business by being yourself. Period. And it's expensive to be everybody else. What? Hmm. I love that question because like you sort of introed me in the beginning, I'm also an actor. I previously was in musical theater, and then after the strikes of 23, I really said I want to get into film and television. There's a unique opportunity to tell stories through this medium, and I started training. And when I started to, and I kept getting in my head a lot. I was like, okay, how are you going to put what content do you even put out here? You know what I mean? Like, and anyone who's an actor, you're going to understand this part, because it's like you're waiting for someone to book you for the project so that you can have the clips to build your demo reel. But if nobody's booking you, you don't have your demo reel. We're in a new market. We are in a new job market. This is something we talk about at LinkedIn all the time. You have to get very innovative and creative with how you get your stuff out to your audience. So you get a lot of actors nowadays, they're creating their own shorts. They're stepping into being a director. They're stepping into being a script writer. They're getting into writers' rooms. And what I started testing out, and I tested this out through LinkedIn at first, was, well, what happens if I do just sit down and create a video recording, me doing my makeup? But it's not about the makeup. It's about me talking about showing up for yourself, or believing in yourself, or even video best practices and tips. And when I tell you that the opportunities that started to come as a result of that were just something I hadn't even seen. I mean, first of all, internally, I became known as that video girl, like that girl who like creates this type of content. And this is where I say our power can fall. You want a certain job in a company and it doesn't exist. You start doing what the work is of that job. And if you're good enough at it, you can start creating your own JD. You can start calling some shots. You can start advocating for yourself in a way where people know you specifically for that opportunity. Outside of the company, casting directors started to hit me up. They were like, we see that you can be on camera. Do you have other clips? And by then, I had things from the hosting spaces and all these other things. Sometimes you just need to get your foot in the door. And one of the things that we talk about a lot, particularly on like Let's Talk Offline, is that, Gen Z is going through their own challenges of how they show up. They a lot of them were in school when the pandemic happened, and then now they've transitioned, and maybe their first job or two out of school, they were working from home, and now some of them are going into the office for the first time. They're meeting new managers. They have to learn on the fly. And so one of the things that like we always are encouraging through our episodes is, how do you stand out, and how do you do the thing that nobody else wants to do? And I think that that's really sort of the power that you have. Like, what is nobody else doing around you? Well, do that, because then all of a sudden, you know what you become? Indispensable. Nobody wants to let go of the person who does good work. Like, they do not. And people will advocate for that. So, you know, I just always say, put the content out there. And the last thing I'll say on this, it does not matter how many views, how many likes, how many whatever you get. Particularly when we think about video on LinkedIn, what has been so encouraging are the notes that I get from different creators. They hop in my in-mails, and those, or even some of them, they find me on Instagram or whatever else because they're just so excited. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. And they send me notes, and they're like, I was discouraged at first because I posted this video and I took your tips and I only got like 5,000 views or whatever. And then they're like, but then a few days later, the CEO of this company hit me up. Or I got on the radar of this person who went to school with this person and now they've connected me with this. Or I got booked for a speaking engagement because of this video. And those are the success stories that we don't talk about a lot because everybody wants the virality moment. Everyone wants that big moment where all of a sudden you became an overnight success. But anyone who knows anything about an overnight success is an overnight success takes 20 years to make. So it may not take you 20 years, but it is going to require you to be intentional and show up day after day after day. Don't get caught up on the views. Don't get caught up on the likes. Look and see who's in your comments and culture and nurture that audience. That's something that everybody can take and something I even have to hold myself accountable for. Sometimes I get real busy. You're never too busy for your audience. Not if you want to make some money. You're never too busy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh gosh. Oh God. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy because you knew I was going to follow up with you after because I was like, we have some things to discuss. So let's see. A couple of things that I think that you already do well is you already are sharing like, clips from your podcast. I tell people all the time, LinkedIn doesn't have to just be a place where finance, healthcare, and tech people thrive. If you are a creative creator, you need to be posting. We all know about showing your receipts, and LinkedIn is a wonderful place to do that because you can build that community with your friends, with your church folks, with your mama and them, but you're also going to do it with your future employer. So I would definitely say that what you do well is by sharing, parts of your podcast. Now, where I would love to see more is, for instance, you just taking a camera and less branding, outside of the podcast, but you even just sitting down and like sharing like those actionable, like, here are three things I wish I had known when I first started out in the game. Or like, here are three things that you need to be successful if you want to do X, Y, and Z. Like, these are action oriented, insightful pieces of content that people can say, okay, I can take this right now and I can apply it to my life and I can better it. Obviously you have a team, so like even you talking about, what are things that you wish you had known before you started managing a team. Or, one thing I love to see, because I always try to think in headlines, it's like, uh 5 things you need to do before you hire an executive assistant, because everybody thinks the first thing you do when you start making money is building the team. You're building a team and you have no infrastructure and you have no money. You have temporary money, but you need money. So I always say, and we've talked about this repeatedly, like, put yourself also in the shoes of the person who is watching or reading or consuming that piece of content. What does your audience want to know? What are the questions people ask you on a day-to-day basis? Like, how can you kind of rebuild that, and how can you share that, particularly in a video in a video format? I definitely think that we all have an opportunity to sort of elevate our video storytelling in such a unique way. And look, I get it. Nowadays, I've been in the game so long with this that I've seen all the different iterations of video creation. There used to be where you just like shot it on a basic camera, and then there was like that wave where everyone had the DSLRs, and then you had to get the ring lights and the tripods and this and that. And now we've kind of gotten back to this whole like your iPhone or your smart device is enough. On LinkedIn, that's more than enough. Like, people are doing so well with the bare, remember, minimal viable product. It's the storytelling that matters. And what I would say the storytelling on LinkedIn differs from other platforms is that other platforms, okay, you just post a dancing video. That's fine. It's for entertainment, right? LinkedIn is different in the sense that, one, we're an SEO optimized website, so your post copy should still be optimized that if someone was searching X, Y, and Z on Google, they could find it through LinkedIn. But also, share enough that like people could depend on the post copy and not watch the video. I always say in a perfect world, you would have a really strong post copy that could operate outside of the video, and you would also have a very actionable video that could operate outside of the post copy. When you marry those two worlds together, you get this really, really great piece of content that people just kind of get to know and love. And so like that would be kind of honestly where I would say start. And then let me see, I'm going to look right now because I'm gonna hold you accountable. Brandon, some people are like thanking you and saying nice things in your comments, and I don't see you writing back. Didn't we talk about this? Yes. If someone is thanking you, then you gotta follow up. So that's another thing. Yes. Engage in the comments. Engage in the comments. Engage in the comments. The comments are so important. I tell people comments to me are liquid gold for LinkedIn, and I'm gonna tell you why. So you and I connected on LinkedIn or whatever else, and you post a piece of content that I find really awesome, and you've added a call to action, a CTA, at the end of your post. Being like, so what are your thinking? What are your thoughts? X, Y, and Z. That's another thing that you can add to your posts moving forward. I'm looking like click the link to listen is good, but it's not. But we want to get people to engage in the comments. So, okay, you've put out this great piece of content, whatever. You've asked me, a call to action, like, so what do you all think about X, Y, and Z? Now, I'm chiming in on the comments and I'm sharing, how I feel about it, X, Y, and Z. Our algorithm is now saying, okay, Jamé liked this piece of content. Who of Jamé's followers or in people in her orbit and community like similar things that she likes that now we can show Brandon's piece of content to? So that is how, if you've ever looked on your LinkedIn profile and you're like, who is this person who is now on my feed? That's how they're getting there, because you've at some point or another interacted with a piece of content that's gotten there and then it's gone around. It's like the solar system. I don't know how to explain it, but everything kind of goes into orbit and it comes back around. So I say all of this to say, when you post the piece of content, engage with the comments, get people to don't be clickbaity, but like get people to engage in the comments and follow up with them, ask them follow-up questions, because ultimately outside of that with the algorithm, what you're also doing is you're priming your audience with information that, and once they kind of respond, you can use that information for future pieces of content. Nowadays, a lot of the videos that I create personally on LinkedIn are spurred from someone else's comment on another video. Like someone's like, oh, I love that you talked about this. Would you be able to talk about this next time? And I'm like, cool, bet. Log it in the back pocket, and at some point or another I get to it. So definitely see this as like a machine and a vehicle that you can kind of always ask yourself, what can I be spoon feeding my audience? But as your audience is engaging, what is your audience asking of you that you can then create more content for? Yes. Mm, mm-hmm. I think discourse is healthy. I think I think people you shouldn't want I don't think you should ever want everybody to agree with you, because if everybody agree with you, then you lukewarm. Like, you don't really stand for nothing. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel about it. Um there now, obviously, there are some opinions you have that are really, really strong, and then there are some opinions that you're like, okay, whatever. But, like, for instance, before we started recording, we were talking about football teams, and I have a strong opinion about my football team, and you have one for yours. But under the under the guise of the Lord and all of His children, we love each other, but we also understand the difference, right? Now, I could take that and be one of those, like, oh no, why would Brandon say this? Blah, blah, blah. But I'm also like, nah, he's sharing his own opinion, and I can do the same. I think what LinkedIn does really well is we provide the platform. We have over 1 billion members. So more than likely, if you are creating and if you are sharing your story, at some point or another, somebody is going to disagree with you, or they're just not going to see you for eye for eye. That's actually wonderful, because if you share your own personal idea or thought process or how you've done something, and somebody comes up and they're like, yeah, but like, I've also done it this way. Well, now you've also done an exchange of knowledge. You've learned something new, as long as everybody keeps it cute, right? And now the other people who are also in that comment section or engaging with the content is now continuously being informed. I think healthy discourse is necessary. And honestly, when you are putting yourself out there to be a storyteller, to be a creator, you have to get comfortable with being misunderstood, with being misinterpreted at times, and for people not always agreeing with you. I think, like, for instance, with Let's Talk Offline, Gianna and I we have two very different lives, two very different career paths, two very different entryways and life experiences. And there are times where what she may say and I say are like, on the surface level, could appear like they are contrasting each other. But what we're really saying is your viewpoint and my viewpoint are both right. And they both actually reflect our audience and the people who are listening. Some people, on some days, they may see more. Like, I'll give you an example. We have an episode where we talk about work friendships. And Gianna is very much so like, I want to make friends at work. And I'm like, go home, like, get your check and go home. Like, there are some people who, yeah, like, I've had in my wedding and, whatever else that I'm cool with. But I've also lived through experiences where I've seen how that can get sticky. So we're not telling you got to make friends or you don't have to make friends. What we're saying is, you have a viewpoint, I have a viewpoint. Now we can share it together. And anyone listening can now take that and they can kind of make their own informed decision off of it. And I personally think when you present information like that this is what's worked for me and this is how I've seen it, instead of this is prescriptive and this is the only way you can do it, you invite more people to the table. And honestly, when you think about the diversity of thought, that's really what I'm encouraging people to do. And that's why I say, as I've said repeatedly, you being yourself is what matters here. You don't got to sugarcoat it. You don't got to spice it up. You just got to be yourself. And you're going to build the audience that you need to, because people are going to see it and they're going to relate to it. Or even if they don't, they can respect game. And that's it. Because I will. Because I will. I'm going to be like, hey, Brandon, so where's the video for this week? Where's it at? In the drafts? What's up? Man, negotiating is one of my favorite topics. But if you would ask me 5 years ago, I would have literally just like started having like heart palpitations. We have an episode actually where we talk about negotiating. And the reason why it's so important for us to talk about it, and I say this in the episode, people will try to play you. There's no other way for me to say it. If you give people an inch, they will take 40 miles. They will run. They will just keep going. And as much as you could like look at it and be like, yo, why would you do me like that? Why is this? You didn't set boundaries, boo. You didn't set the boundaries. You didn't figure out, okay, where is my line? And I tell people all the time, negotiating doesn't just start or stop at the 9 to 5. You have to figure out ways to negotiate everything in your life. And if you struggle with that, starting with small things can help too. Like, for instance, I negotiate what I want for dinner. You want one thing? Well, maybe I want something else. Let's figure out, how do we compromise, right? Or, I have an assignment, I have a project due this day, but I can't because I have X, Y, and Z also. Let me sit down with my manager and figure out, okay, how can we reprioritize or negotiate maybe a new deadline? And I think a lot of people get nervous because, one, maybe the fear of rejection is there. Like, you're afraid, like, oh, if I ask for what I want, people gonna say no. Well, they were gonna say no if you didn't ask anyway. So you don't have anything to lose. You might as well ask. You know what I mean? And that has only come from being an entrepreneur. This is why I think so many more creatives should work corporate jobs. I understand the whole, I want to be an artist and I want to be celebrated for my work. Well, we have bills. We have bills to pay. And one thing I have learned is that these corporations want creatives. They want our minds. They want us to come in. But it was by being an entrepreneur, being that young blogger or host or media personality who had to figure out, how do I negotiate my own contract? Because I don't even have money to hire a lawyer. I had to learn all of that on my own. And this was before the chat GPTs were out there. So you really were deep down. And yeah, you were asking your friends or person, like, how much would you do this or whatever, trying to figure out, tally it up in your head like a calculator. And I'm so thankful for that time because it's made me so bullish now about making sure I'm good. You make sure you're good. That's not selfish. Because when you are good, and whatever good means for you, whether that is financially, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, whatever, then you can show up and do your best work. But you can't do that until you know you're good. And when it comes to, like, negotiating and boundaries, it's just a conversation. It's just a conversation that we're having. And like I said, either people are going to agree and then they're going to give it to you, or they're not. And then at that point, now you have the leverage to decide, do I walk away or do I stay? And I just think we need to get more comfortable with advocating for ourselves. Because again, what do you have to lose? And I love this a lot because, particularly when you think about, when you get that first job offer or any job offer, people don't want to push back because they're gonna take the offer. And I've said this in the episode that we talk about for negotiating. If you're that girl, they're not gonna take the offer away. Like, for real. Like, if you really are that, if you are the person who you say you are and who you think you are, like, they're not going to take the offer away. Now, if you go out and ask for, like, Oprah level money on a job that's gonna cap at like 95 bands, like, okay, that's different. But if you really can back up what you're saying and you can kind of show why you're asking for what you're asking for, if you can show your experience, if you can show, as we talked about earlier, the transferable skills that you have amassed over your jobs, you build a case for yourself. And let me tell you, even when I have gotten rejected from brand deals or from opportunities or jobs, I still go to bed well at night, knowing that at least I showed up for myself. All you have in this world is yourself and your word. You got to show up for yourself. Wow. Hmm. It's not gone. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And I think sometimes where we make the mistake is we're just so thankful to be in the room. Yeah. And I've said this before. This is an exchange of goods and services. Like, let's keep it a stack. Like, can you love your job? Yes. Can you feel fulfilled with the work you do? Yes. But at the end of the day, you stop performing, all that love, family stuff go right out the window, and you about to be over there. Like, it's not personal. And I think like we got to take the personal out of it. Like, this is not personal, like you said, like that you're not taking money away from somebody else. And I have learned the first job I got where like I was pushing like money. I was like, oh wow. I was so starstruck by the number, I didn't even negotiate. Now, afterward, I was like, okay, cool, that's fine, because I think the number was still like $30,000 more than what I was going to even ask for. So I was like, oh, I'm good. I get into the role, and the guy who does the exact same job as me, who starts the same day as me, I find out later on he's making like $20,000 more than I am. And I was like, see, you were sitting here and you were so excited to be in the room, and you didn't want to shake the table, that you didn't advocate for yourself. And what you've now done is you've set yourself up that as long as you stay at this company, you're always going to be a certain percentage behind him. And he wasn't black. So, he probably just said the number, and he just sat with the stillness. We got to get comfortable in the silence. Ask for what you want and be still. Don't try to do the whole no, 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 no. No. Say what you need to say and be quiet. Go sip some water or something. Let them ruminate on it. Exactly. Exactly. Mm. You know, most of this world was not designed for us to succeed. It's sad, but it's true. I think a lot about America and the state of America, and I was like, America was not built for black people to succeed, at least not from our origin and how we got here. And when I think about that and I reflect on that, I think to myself, I have a due diligence to show people that your dream life is a life worth fighting for. Like, we could sit down and we could chop it up one day, but a girl like me, who comes from where I come from, who has seen and experienced the things that I have seen and experienced in my life, shouldn't be in New York. She shouldn't be in tech. Like, I shouldn't even probably even be here. You know what I mean? And I have always dedicated that as long as I have breath in my body, I am going to show people that you do good work, you be good to people, and you follow not just your heart and your passion, but you follow what you believe you are put here on this earth to do. You not only free yourself from whatever shackles others want to put on you, but you help free others too. Like, some of the most rewarding things I ever get are those messages from people, particularly like, younger black women or even men who come to me and be like, I didn't know how to do this, but then I saw a video of yours, or I listened to the podcast, and I've never thought that like I could talk so freely about this. Or there are young women who come up to me in the office. Now, mind you, I be having my big headphones on because like I really be spaced out in my own world. But they come to me and they're like, "Oh, I just saw you presented at this big company event." And like, I just never thought I would see like a curvy black girl with like long nails and lashes, like holding space like that. And that's what I do it for. Like, when you have such a front facing job, a lot of people start to see you, but they don't understand that when I don't do what I'm supposed to do on this earth, I don't jeopardize just me. I jeopardize everyone who God has assigned to me. And I take that assignment very seriously. And the good thing about it is, whatever you feel like your appointed assignment is, You can do that through so many different mediums. And so for me as a storyteller, I can do that through community management. I can do that through being having a podcast. I can do that through writing. I can do that through acting. And so I always say, whenever I leave this earth, which is going to be long, 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 long from now, I don't want to leave this earth with any of my gifts. I want to have emptied out the bag and shaken it and gotten down to the end. I want to have poured it all out, and I wanted to have blessed other people along the way and have equipped other people. I think it's Pac who said, like, I may not change the world, but I'm gonna inspire the person who will. And I think if we all kind of take that universal idea that we all have a voice and we all can share something that can impact other people, I think the world can kind of continue to evolve in a place that does create space for us. And last but certainly not least, I'm always just gonna be blackety black. Like at this point, like I can't really walk into rooms, Brandon, and people be like, "Oh, I wonder what is she." I think you're gonna see quickly that this is a black girl, and I want us to celebrate that. I want us to celebrate our blackness. I want us to celebrate these spaces that we build for ourselves. I want us to support our black owned businesses. I want us to support our black creatives and our black tech professionals, and everything about us that has made us such a resilient people is worth telling. And the only way we tell that is by showing up for each other and building that community, not seeing ourselves as competition, seeing ourselves as collaborators and as community, and understanding when you win, I win. Like when Brandon wins, Jamé wins, just by proxy of I'm just happy to see a black man win. You know what I mean? And so I think like we have to kind of continuously show up, not just for ourselves and understanding our appointed gifts and how we can give that out to the world, but then how do we take those gifts and how do we help other people in the process? Yeah, because I will. Oh, that's a really good question because you know what? I actually have it down. I'm manifesting a billboard one day. So look, it's twice now. I wrote it down. I prayed about it, and now you bringing it up. Okay, all right. So let's see. Um, I definitely think that the billboard would say sort of what I've always deemed my tagline to be, which is your dream life is a life worth fighting for. And it is. It doesn't matter if you've never seen anybody in your family do it. It doesn't matter if you don't know anyone who's doing it. In many ways, I don't know a lot of people who are doing exactly what I do. And that's okay. Get over the fear. Build the community, put one foot in front of the other because you're going to figure it out. Like you're going to figure it out. You have to have that unshakable, unwavering faith in yourself that you can do this. And when you understand that whatever it is that you want in this life, you deserve, as long as you're willing to work for it, it's yours. Yeah, y'all don't be shy. I am at the Blonde Misfit across all social media. On LinkedIn, I'm Jamé Jackson Gadsden. That is JaméJackson. Don't worry, y'all. Brandon and the team gonna make sure y'all get all that because I know that's a lot. And then definitely make sure you check our podcast out. It's called Let's Talk Offline, where Gianna and I talk every week to Gen Z and early career professionals. And come by, swing by. We don't bite. I do get spicy, but I don't bite. I promise. Appreciate you.